Diablo 3. It was one of the most hyped games of the past 5 years, and all that hype went right out the window when it was released. Plagued by launch problems, always online DRM, and the auction house, it was well received by critics, but almost universally hated by fans. But here it is, a little over a year later, and this time the game is on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. The real question here, though, is does the console release make Diablo 3 a better game? And surprisingly, the answer is yes. Diablo 3 was meant to be played on consoles. I know a lot of people that were hyped for the PC release were vastly disappointed, and I get that, I understand their frustrations, but Diablo 3 was made for consoles. Playing with a controller just feels so much more natural, and even though some of the base problems aren't fixed, Diablo 3 is a great time with some friends in couch or online co-op. If you're unaware, Diablo 3 is a hack-and-slash action RPG game. You pick one of the 5 characters, a witch doctor, barbarian, wizard, monk, or demon hunter, and you go through 4 acts that make up the campaign. The story this time around isn't necessarily gripping, but it gets you from point A to point B, and guess who you fight at the very end? I'll give you a hint, it's the name of the game. If you've played games such as Torchlight, you know exactly what to expect here. Loads of enemies to cut through, plenty of randomly generated items, and huge bosses to mow down. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't addicting and didn't make you feel like a complete badass, but don't get me wrong, there are some differences compared to the typical ARPG. For one, you now get to pick and choose your skills and switch them out at any time you want. This brings a huge variety of playstyles to each character, lets you change your build, so to speak. If you don't like where it's going, you could always change it and figure out something else. You also unlock runes to modify each and every skill in crazy ways. For example, as a witch doctor, I can modify a certain spell to have life leech or poison, and each rune also changes the way that the skill looks. The biggest bummer, for me at least, is the way that the items are handled. Picking stats upon leveling up is gone, and now you're at the whim of your items. The problem here is that pretty much any item can be considered useless if it has the wrong stat on it. No vitality or plus damage? Well, you might as well salvage it at the blacksmith and hope you can find something else, because it definitely won't help you. This is also true for legendaries. I've gotten legendaries that were completely useless for me, even though they were supposed to be better. However, I might just be lucky, but I've been finding about one legendary every 1 to 2 hours at the normal difficulty. It's kind of absurd at the rate they drop. However, the removal of the auction house and the addition of couch co-op are some of the greatest things that happened to Diablo 3. Removing the auction house makes it so you don't have to rely solely for paying on your gear, and consequently the drop rates were adjusted for monsters. Local co-op runs smoothly, and it's great for an evening with friends and a few beers. Drops are not instants anymore in couch co-op either, which harkens back to the older Diablo games where it's almost like a competition for loot. Visually, Diablo 3 surprised me when I booted it up. It runs at a relatively stable 60 frames per second on consoles, even with 4 players playing on the screen, which isn't very common on these aging consoles. It also has many of the small visual details and physics from the PC version, such as spiderwebs billowing in the wind and props exploding in every which way when you attack them. As most Diablo games, you are meant to play it repeatedly so you can get better and better gear. It takes probably 3 or so runs through the game to get to the max level of 60, and it also has several difficulties which can become really challenging very quickly. There's definitely plenty of content here to work with and can easily last you for dozens of hours. Being Diablo, there are also plenty of areas in the game that are randomized as well, which make for a different experience each time. However, I was a little bit disappointed because a lot of these areas, while still random, are pretty linear and consist mostly of very small hallways. If you'd played the PC version of Diablo 3, the console port definitely won't change your mind or anything. But this isn't necessarily for you. This is for the millions of people without a gaming rig that missed out on the Diablo franchise, and this serves as an introduction for them. While it doesn't fix all the problems of the PC version, Blizzard seemed to have improved the experience. If you haven't played Diablo before and enjoyed the genre, I would say Diablo 3 is at least worth a run.